is testament to the resilience of a human spirit and the heights that dedication can achieve. Ma'am, we are eagerly await your guidance and insightful knowledge sharing during this session. Now, I would like to introduce our next panelist for the day. Today, I have the honor and introducing a versatile personality, Mr. Niranjan Shivalkar, who stands as a prominent figure in the world of a sports broadcasting. Based in the UK, Mr. Shivalkar embodies more than just a sports broadcaster. He is a visionary live sports and video producer known for his a dynamic and multi-camera directing and mastery of a replay operations. His expertise extends seamlessly into a content creation and the editing, where he crafts compelling the narratives and resonate with the audience and worldwide. Mr. Shivalkar is a highly specialized in providing high quality sports content, writing insightful, knowledgeable, and thoughtful articles as a broadcaster freelancer, he adeptly serves as a camera operator, capturing the essence of a live sports events. Through his career, Mr. Shivalkar has a dedication and innovation in the capturing the essence of a sports, leveraging the technology and the storytelling to the showcase the emotional journeys of athletes and the spirits of the competition. His work serves as a powerful reminder of a unifying and the inspiring force of a sports. Today we have honor to welcome you as our distinguished guest, where your wisdom will illuminate our discussion with a fresh perspective and inspiring insights. Moving further, it is our honor to gather today as I extend a warm welcome to Mr. Abir Balla, a true leader and an advocate for a positive change on a global scale. Mr. Balla's journey is truly impressive. He has graced the TEDx stage 3 times, captivating audience with his visionary ideas and compelling stories. His roles as a youth advisor to the governing board at a CHEC International reflects his commitment to the shaping the impactful policies, having conducted over 250 speaking engagement and workshops. Mr. Balla has empowered numerous individuals to find their voices and take the actions. As my voice ambassador for the Earth Day International. He passionately promotes the environmental and sustainability. Mr. Balla's influence extends globally, highlighted by his significant contribution at COP28 and COP27, where he addressed critical environmental issues. His dedication earned him a recognition as one of BBC top youth environmentalists in 2020, underscoring his leadership and commitment. Moreover, Mr. Balla founded Swachh Chetna, a notable campaign partner with the Delhi Metro for awareness, cleanliness, and plantation drives. Additionally, he led a team over 40 volunteers at a care for air, focusing on combating air pollution through the extensive awareness sessions with the schools, colleges, and community groups. Your presence as our esteemed guest today brings a wealth of knowledge and inspiration. We eagerly look forward to hearing from your insightful thoughts. Our next panelist for today, it is it is with a great pleasure and honor that we welcome Miss Avni Garg to our college today. She is a true pioneer in the entrepreneurship and the talent of development. Miss Avni Garg journey is defined by innovation, leadership, and a commitment to excellence. As a founder of Elucidation today, Miss Avni Garg has carved a path of inspiration, fostering dialogue and insight through an impactful initiative. Her role as a consultant at the Ashoka University's Center for Entrepreneurship underscores her dedication to nurturing entrepreneurial spirit and fostering future leaders. Previously, Miss Avni Garg served as a talent advisor at a Randstad, where she applied her expertise to empower individual and the organization alike. Her contribution as a research assistant at the IIM Ahmedabad and United Nations have significantly enriched our understanding of critical issues shaping our world today. Miss Avni Garg influence extends beyond the academia and into an entrepreneur ecosystem where she is widely recognized as a mentor and a panelist, guiding and inspiring the next generation of innovators. We are delighted to invite you to join us as a panelist and share your insightful thoughts. We shall begin with our panel discussion, and I would now like to request Ms. Avnigar to start a comments discussion.
Thank you so much, Abhilasha ma'am. I hope I am clearly audible to everyone. Thank you. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you all to this panel discussion. I will be the moderator for this panel. As we gather here, we are reminded of the powerful role that media plays in shaping our perception, narratives, and ultimately our realities. And I'm honored to be moderating this discussion and excited to hear the insights and solutions that our wonderful panelists will bring to the table. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and let's dive into this critical conversation. Geeta, I would like to begin with you. My first question is directed to you because you're a sports person. Could you please shed some light on what changes are needed in sports media practices to better portray intersectionality? We'll just wait for Geeta to join us again. In the meantime, why don't I ask a question from Abhir? Abhir, do you think it is important to address intersectionality in media portrayals?
Hi, Avni. Thanks. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, I think it's very important to address intersectionality because, um, we look at TV shows, we look at Instagram, we look at social media at large, and very often, if one actually pays close attention, sort of tend to see that um, particular shows are geared for particular audiences, right? There's a very specific targeting, there's a very specific messaging. um, Let me give you an example, right? Let's take Netflix for example, right? Nowadays there are so many movies and shows coming out on Netflix, and when you're choosing a movie, it asks you to pick a genre, right? There's comedy, there's thriller, there's suspense. But lately, I've noticed there's also a category called queer friendly, which is interesting because last I knew, queer friendly isn't exactly a genre, right? It's just a sort of acknowledgement that it's a movie that is queer friendly per se. Um, similarly, I think there's I mean, rom-com is a genre, but there's another genre on Netflix which is just romantic, right? So it's talking more about the, for lack of a better word, the vibes of the movie than the genre itself. And I use this example to sort of highlight that um, whether it's whether it's media which is more friendly towards younger audiences, or whether it's conventional media, right? Good old cable TV or something or the other. Um, I think it's important to sort of understand how intersectionality is presented in the media or the lack thereof, right? Similarly, I mean, if you look at car advertisements, right, on TV, I don't remember if I've ever seen a lady driver driving those cars. You see a car advertisement for a Ciaz, a Mercedes, whatever it is, whichever car, right? Sabse badi se sabse choti gaadi ho. You never find a woman driver in them, right? Similarly for pan masala advertisements. So it's just interesting to sort of begin by acknowledging that uh, it's important for people to understand where intersectionality is present and where it's not. And I'm hoping we can take a deeper dive into that further after this. Yeah.
I think your answer has really set the pace for the rest of the panel discussion, Abir. Thanks for that. Niranjan, moving on to you, do you see issues in the way media portrays intersectionality? And if you want to carry forward what Abir said, that's also totally fine.
Hi everyone. Good morning to you all. I hope I'm audible. As Abir correctly said, obviously, the way media portrays intersectionality, you know, is in a way that could be sexist. Bit inclined towards uh, you know more inclined towards males rather than females. But coming from the sports media background, I would say the focus is always on covering something that sells, because ultimately, let's face it, it's business and they want to sell something that people want to buy. So the way a Virat Kohli is portrayed will be different from a way Smriti Mandhana is portrayed. So over there, we don't see it as a responsibility to be politically correct all the time, or make a change, or work towards changing something in the society. We see it as content. Ultimately, it's business, and uh, we'll sell what people are willing to buy. So that is how I look at it. But that has always been the case. May it be sports or may it be any other way. But I see that changing. With inclusion of diverse narratives these days. I think the focus has moved from cricket to a lot other sports nowadays, and I think that is a positive change. And I see that, and I'll see you'll see these things rapidly changing in the coming future as well.
Thank you so much for that. Do we have Geeta among us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Let me redirect the question to her. So, because you're a sports person, Geeta, could you please shed some light on what changes are needed in sports media practices to better portray intersectionality?
फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल तो हमें एक तो स्पोर्ट्स ग्राउंड की ज़रूरत होती है। सेकंड आपको पता होगा कि इंडिया में एक पैरा स्पोर्ट्स का इतना अवेयरनेस नहीं है। ना ही काफ़ी लोग आज भी जानते हैं, ना ही लोग डिसेबिलिटी के हिसाब से स्पोर्ट्स को समझते हैं। उनके लिए तो टोटल नया है। स्पोर्ट्स हमारे लिए बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है। इनफैक्ट लाइफ में जो चेंजेस आए हैं स्पोर्ट्स की वजह से, लोगों की नज़रों में तो प्रैक्टिकली हम एक अनयूजलेस पीपल लगते हैं, बट ऐसा नहीं है। ये है कि अगर आप स्पोर्ट्स में एक अच्छा मुकाम हासिल करते हैं आज के टाइम में, तो एक अलग ही लोगों के लिए एक बोलते हैं ना, अलग ही लोगों के लिए एक इंटेंस आता है कि आप स्पोर्ट्स में भी बहुत अचीव कर सकते हो। एक टाइम था कि पहले के टाइम पे कि आप एक स्पोर्ट्स को खेल-कूद के अलावा कुछ नहीं समझते थे। आज एक टाइम पीरियड्स ऐसा है कि स्पोर्ट्स आपकी लाइफ चेंज करता है। इनफैक्ट मेरी लाइफ की जर्नी ऐसी रही है ना, तो उस चेंजेस इतने आ चुके हैं कि मुझे मेरे ही घर में मुझे मेरी वैल्यू या जो एक रिस्पेक्ट नहीं मिलती थी ना, आज कहीं ज़्यादा मिलती है। सो चेंजेस बहुत है और स्पोर्ट्स के हिसाब से आप जो इसे बता रहे हो कि हमें क्या-क्या रिक्वायरमेंट है, क्या नहीं है। एग्ज़ैक्टली फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल तो हमें कोई ग्राउंड देना पसंद नहीं करता आज के टाइम में। हम लास्ट 9 मंथ से ग्राउंड के लिए भटक रहे हैं महाराष्ट्र वुमेन्स। हमारे पास ग्राउंड नहीं है, मुंबई यूनिवर्सिटी में प्रैक्टिस करते हैं। फिलहाल बंद है और हमने इतनी जगह पे कोर्ट्स ट्राई किए, कोई कोर्ट दे ही नहीं रहा है। तो ये सब इश्यूज़ चल रहे हैं फिलहाल तो। चैलेंजेस ईज़ी नहीं है। इनफैक्ट हमारे स्पोर्ट्स विचेज़ इतने कॉस्टली होते हैं मोस्टली, उसकी प्राइस ऑलमोस्ट 5 टू 6 लाख है। सो वो भी बाय करना हमारे लिए ईज़ी नहीं है। प्लस हमारे कैंप के एक्सपेंसिव खर्चे, बहुत सारे एक्सपेंसिव चीज़ें हैं, जो हमें बेयर करना ईज़ी नहीं है हमारे लिए। सो स्ट्रगल बहुत है आज भी।
Thank you. I think that really opens up our mind to the challenges that different sports persons face. That's really an insightful answer, Geeta. Thanks for that. Abhir, my next question to you is that what role does media play in shaping public perceptions and attitudes towards intersectional identities? And in this question, if you could also mention what types of intersectional identities people may have, that would also be great.
Sure, sure. So, well, I mean, identities can be several and multifaceted, right? Let me take my own examples of when I talk about myself. Today, I'm speaking to this audience as a former student of media studies, as someone who does a lot of interactions with the media, and as someone who, in some senses, has more than just a budding interest in the field, right? Um, but very often, the majority of the time, I'm speaking on climate change and sustainability as a youth environmentalist, and that's in my personal capacity. On the other hand, a lot of audiences that I address, I'm coming in as a youth speaker, because typically you'll see that on a lot of panels there are a lot of uh, how should I say this, white haired people sometimes, right? So you have to sort of wear different hats at different times, and again, similarly, when I'm doing my 9 to 5, when I'm wearing my corporate hat, that's another identity. So and that can, these come from different places. Of course, it can be a religion, gender, sexuality, uh, literally any aspect of your life. So that's how I think you wear so many different hats. But more specifically to your first question, I think, um, when it comes to public perceptions, when it comes to shaping attitudes, um, again, any form of media that we consume, right? Whether it's news on the TV, whether it's reels that we're watching on Instagram, or whether it's movies, we've seen that they can deeply, deeply influence our perception of things, right? Um, we recently there was a movie, uh, which not so recently, but there was a movie which came out. Um, I'm just forgetting the name. There was, yeah, Shrikant, which came out, right, and before that there was Andhadhun. Both of those were movies which spoke a lot about people with visual impairments, right, and how they go about their life, how that makes a difference. Similarly, there have been movies like Badhai Do, and other movies which are building awareness around homosexuality, right? So all these movies, or again similarly conversations on social media, start by building awareness, and then it sort of diverges, right? Either it builds acceptance, it builds tolerance, it opens people's mind to certain ideas, or it spurs debate, right? Very often these movies come out, and then 5 days later you'll see that there are prime time debates going on whether they should, whether they should have got certificate approval or not, right? Because it's controversial or it's hurting certain sentiments. So even in some senses, even the debate that is emerging as a result of these movies or these reels is also in some senses creating awareness, whether for better or for worse is a separate story, but it still is creating awareness that was possibly lacking in the minds of so many others before, right? So obviously it's extremely, extremely powerful when it comes to the possibility, or the avenues that it could create for acceptance of intersectional identities. But on the flip side, it can also be misused for perpetuating stereotypes, right? You look at Hollywood movies, or even these, criminal sort of thriller shows on Hotstar, or any of these other platforms. Why is the terrorist always Islamic, right? Why are criminals always people of color? Right? Similarly, shows, the good old shows like Sara Bhai versus Sara Bhai, or pan India favorite of Kapil Sharma show, or even cartoons, right? Like Shinchan and Doraemon, they perpetuate so many stereotypes. Shinchan and Doraemon, as children, perpetuates the idea that females only belong in the kitchen and nothing else. Right? Kapil Sharma show perpetuates sort of I mean, I agree with the argument today that people are becoming very, very politically correct, and it's killing the space for humor and comedy and all of that. But Kapil Sharma show can be very, very transphobic sometimes. It can be very, very fat shaming at times. Right. Again, shows like Saas Bhi Kabhi Bhauti, Sara Bhai versus Sara Bhai, very good to watch. Very nice drama. You want that gossip to watch over popcorn. Very nice. But again, perpetuating stereotypes very subconsciously, right? So again, two sides to every coin. But I think, especially with the new age movies coming out, they can, sort of spread a lot more awareness, um, when it comes to issues of making people aware about queer rights, or making people aware of people with disabilities and their challenges. So yeah, stuff like that.
That's very helpful, Abir. I think using your personal example to explain intersectionality has really helped us understand the concept of intersectionality. And then all the popular shows you used as examples to again portray how unconsciously or subconsciously we consume a lot of media content that could shape our intersectional understanding of the world is just wonderful. Niranjan, my next question is to you. How can sports media advocate for intersectional athletes and their stories according to you? Because you've been into broadcasting. So we would love to know your opinion on this particular aspect.
See, I would say it's a bit different, as a broadcaster and as a sports journalist. As a broadcaster, when you're covering live sports, you need to understand that, my responsibility is to, not be politically correct and, include all sections of the society and, uh, uh, be correct all the time. My job as a broadcaster is to tell the story of the game. When it comes to that, and all my efforts will be directed towards a seamless broadcast. My job is to tell everyone who's sitting in front of their screens what happened into the game. In that I might be biased sometimes, but that is an effort made, because telling the story of the game is my first job as a broadcaster. And but uh, uh, if you're a sports journalist, then it's a completely different ball game. But Also, having said that, I feel like, if you see the way broadcasters make heroes, uh, to give a few example, in the early 2000s, the way Sachin was made a hero is very different from how the approach was when Virat Kohli came in. Virat Kohli was kind of the bad boy of cricket, where uh, you know his fan base was more directed towards females and the younger, sports viewing audience. But Sachin Tendulkar was marketed as, you know, uh, like someone who is like is present in everybody's house. He was like a everyday boy. He was someone who would be like, okay, when a mother sees Sachin playing, she'd be like, okay, I want my son to be like him. Because he's very mellow, he's very soft. You know, the same I the doubt the same could be said about Virat Kohli. But when it came to Virat Kohli, girls would be like, okay, I want my boyfriend to be like him. Or he's because he's the bad boy of cricket. Somewhere there is a different kind of attraction. And now, if you see recently, the narrations have obviously gone to uh, different levels. If you know who Saurabh Netravalkar is, he represented the USA cricket team, but that guy is from India. He played under 19 World Cup for India. That guy is an engineer. He works at Oracle. Went there as an international student. These stories, I don't think so would have been told uh, a few years in the past, but now these stories, are making to the headlines. And as a broadcaster, not as not as a news person, but you need to understand that anything and everything is done is is to make money. Broadcasting is a serious game, and it involves hell lot of money. If only if you know how expensive the broadcasting rights are. Just for IPL or for the World Cups. That's why even if you see the quality of broadcast, the way men games are covered and the way women games are covered is slightly different. It's not very different, but it's slightly different because they know how much money is to be made. When they are broadcasting a certain sport, depending upon who are playing. First of all, is it cricket or is it any other sport? Then is it men's, women's, or is it other section of the society? Uh, if it's blind cricket, or any other sport. So they know what their target is and what they want to achieve, and anything and everything they do is directed towards that. So that is what I have to say about about this issue.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, I think. I don't think I've ever been as conscious to viewing how Virat Kohli as the captain versus Sachin as the captain was quoted by media. So that's a very interesting insight. Thank you for that. Um, Coming to Geeta, Geeta, what responsibility do sports journalists have in ensuring intersectional representation? Because आप फील्ड पे हो बट हमें तो वही दिख रहा है जो स्पोर्ट्स जर्नलिस्ट हमें दिखा रहे हैं तो उसमें व्हाट डू यू थिंक वुड बी देयर रिस्पांसिबिलिटी?
फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल तो मैम मैं ये बोलूँगी कि जर्नलिस्ट का जो अभी तक फ़िलहाल मेरी लाइफ़ से इम्पैक्ट हुआ है, काफ़ी हुआ है। क्योंकि मेरी काफ़ी स्टोरी उन्होंने कवर की है, मीडिया में आया है, न्यूज़ में, बीबीसी न्यूज़, बीबीसी वर्ल्ड, मार्शेबल इंडिया, बहुत सी मीडिया ने कवर किया है। इससे ये होता है कि एटलीस्ट थोड़ा अवेयरनेस होता है हमारे स्पोर्ट्स के लिए। पैरा स्पोर्ट्स के लिए इतना अवेयरनेस या उतना सपोर्ट नहीं है और वैसी चीज़ों के लिए हमारे लिए मीडिया का सपोर्ट ज़रूरी है और अगर आगे जाके हमें करना है इन केस, तो मीडिया को थोड़ा-सा और प्रेशराइज़ देने की ज़रूरत है कि जो रियल स्टोरी, जो अचीवमेंट है, जो अचीवर है, जो अचीव करते हैं एक्चुअली, वो आगे खुल के आएँ और उनकी चीज़ें जो उनको तकलीफ़ें हैं स्पोर्ट्स से रिलेटेड या जो फाइनेंशियली या जो आगे बढ़ने के लिए प्रॉब्लम्स आ रहे हैं, इनफैक्ट तो स्टेट सरकार या स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को इसमें इम्पैक्ट लेने के लिए मीडिया में जब तक नहीं आएगा तब तक कोई सामने नहीं आएगा। हमारा भी वही कंडीशन है। लास्ट 9 मंथ से मैं स्पोर्ट्स ग्राउंड ढूँढ रही हूँ, तो मीडिया में, न्यूज़ में वगैरह में काफ़ी दिया है। अभी तक कोई सपोर्ट नहीं आया, तो एक मीडिया ही है जिसका इम्पैक्ट लोगों के सामने या सरकार के सामने होता है। तो वो अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं बट थोड़ा और ज़्यादा करने की ज़रूरत है, क्योंकि बहुत से ऐसे पैरा स्पोर्ट्स प्लेयर हैं जो अभी तक इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे फाइट कर रहे हैं। इनको ऑफ़िशियली सपोर्ट की ज़रूरत है, उनको इक्विपमेंट की ज़रूरत है और प्रैक्टिकली गवर्नमेंट की ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है। डिसेबिलिटी से रिलेटेड इतनी चीज़ें है ऑलरेडी पेपर वर्क पे गवर्नमेंट में प्रैक्टिकली कितने लोगों को मिल रही है, कितने लोगों को नहीं मिल रही है, किसी को पता नहीं है। सो जर्नलिस्ट का सपोर्ट है और होना चाहिए और बेहतरीन वो कर सकते हैं आई थिंक सो। बस इतना ही है।
Thank you, thank you. I think Niranjan, I just want to ask you if you have anything to respond to that because clearly journalists and broadcasters seem to have really played up Geeta's story very nicely. And do you think there can be anything more that can be done to elevate the story of para sports persons particularly?
To be honest, Avni, I feel like as a broadcaster, I would say, not as a journalist, because that's not something I'm into. As a broadcaster, I feel you know we treat everybody. For us, every game is a game, and for us, it's like for us, we have to make sure that every broadcast or every live stream that is happening is very true in the sense of it's not a narrative. We can't be like, okay, Indian men's cricket are playing, so obviously we don't have to promote anything. They are popular, they are they are very rich and all of these things. And if I'm covering para athletes, if I should be more sensitive towards them, because then there's you see the athletes as with the eyes of sympathy. and I think that is wrong. An athlete is an athlete. I don't think so. Geeta ma'am is any different than the top athletes in the world just because she's a para athlete. At the end of the day, she is athlete. She's playing a sport, right? So I think everybody, I feel, should be viewed on neutral grounds. Because if we do that, if we try and overplay them, then as audience people will know, and that takes away from the authenticity of the story and the person. And I feel that uh, would be wrong. But I wouldn't say wrong, but I would say, instead of making a case strong, that could also play against us. So for me, an athlete is an athlete, a sport is a sport, may it be any sport. And as broadcasters, it's our uh, job to make sure we treat everybody equally, and not talk in favor of someone and not talk in favor of somebody else, because that has happened over the years, not by broadcasters but by media. If you want to talk about the story of the 2011 World Cup, you know Dhoni is probably the hero of it, and Gambhir is usually looked at it as a villain of it. But you need to understand that when a team is winning, there's contribution of every individual. But Dhoni is a very sellable story. You understand? The way that innings came, where India is stuck. Obviously, uh, the hero of India, Sachin Tendulkar, is dismissed. Virat Kohli walking in silent stadium. You know, the match is pretty caught up, and you are like, oh God, like what's gonna happen? Then obviously MS Dhoni comes, he plays a wonderful innings, and obviously with that 1-6, you can see that, as they say, it's not one shot or one inning that gets you the cup. But even if you go to Google and type 2011 World Cup, the first image you'll see is of that six.
Okay,
So
that
that is, yeah. So that is how it is. I think they should be portrayed as athletes, and not like, they shouldn't be like overplayed or underplayed in any way or form, is what I feel.
got it. Thanks for sharing your perspective on that, Niranjan. Abhir, my question to you is about different platforms you've been invited to. Because we know that you've been invited to share your views at global platforms such as BBC, World Bank, COP28, and other innings of COP, among other multiple platforms you've spoken at. How do you think these platforms can help sensitize towards intersectionality?
Well, I think it's both, right? It's not just the platform, but also uh, the person who's participating, or sort of being a part of that particular forum. Um, if you think about it, I mean, the examples you mentioned, BBC, World Bank, COP, all of them happen to be amongst the better ones, right? But um, there are enough where I've received panel discussions, invites where it's just men on the panel, or I mean, chalo theek hai, in countries where the ratio is so skewed, once in a while you can understand it happening, but the entire lineup of a conference from head to toe with four panels, all of them having only men, is a bit questionable, right? So I think part of the onus and the responsibility lies with organizers. It lies with your hosts, and the sort of platform that is being offered. And on the other hand, the responsibility also lies with the participants, right? Whether it's someone attending a conference or whether it's someone actually even speaking on a panel, it's up to them to say, okay, boss, I don't want to attend this because this doesn't have any diverse perspectives, right? And gender is just the most easy example. It can be people from different backgrounds, and intersectionality and diversity is also, like I said, about any identity of yours, right? So it could just be the fact that, oh, you know what, maybe there's a conference on climate finance and this conference is full of bankers. What about policymakers? What about youth voices? What about international financiers? What about funders, right? You can't just have bankers on a conference about climate finance, or just environmentalists on a conference about climate finance. Um, so the responsibility is as much for the audience or for the participants as much as it is for the organizers. I, as a rule, over the last 2 years, unless it is a very, very unique conversation that I've been invited to contribute to, because typically you see all these conferences and panel discussions beyond a point um, are around similar topics, right? They're given innovative names, they're given a different spin, but they're all on similar topics at the end of the day. So unless it's a very, very unique topic, if it's a topic I've spoken on before, um, and if that particular panel has only men, only people from one particular background, one particular sort of stream of thought, then I tend to say no to that, because what's the point of just sort of being in an echo chamber. um, in terms of what can be done to sensitize more towards intersectionality, I mean, these are some things for sure. But also, again, um, using the example of COP28 or any COP, which is, the world's most prestigious climate conference, um, they could have a sort of quota that, if we have 800 delegates attending, we want 80 of them to be queer youth, we want 80 of them to be people with disabilities. Similarly, having the necessary facilities for people who are differently abled. Right, you can say, oh, it's an inclusive conference, it's whatever it is, but if the venue doesn't have a ramp, or if the venue doesn't have signs in braille, or if the venue doesn't have gender neutral washrooms, then it's just a sort of eyewash, right? So it's about going the journey and actually walking the talk. And yeah, I think those are just a few ideas off the bat.
That makes a lot of sense. I think I we don't give enough attention to the kind of panelists, like you rightly pointed out. But I think in that sense, I seem to believe that our panel is decently represented in terms of gender, at least. So with that,
And people from different backgrounds, so yeah.
different backgrounds for sure, yes. I also saw some of the hands being raised. So we have a separate Q&A session after the panel has ended. I would just request you all to be a little patient, and we'll soon get all of your questions answered by the panelists. Moving to Niranjan. Niranjan, because you've been into broadcasting, what are some common pitfalls or stereotypes that media or broadcasters often fall into when attempting to portray intersectional identities?
I would say a few, like there's no like to answer your question, I would once again say, like there's always been a narrative. So so when it comes to male sports, especially let's say football or cricket or rugby, any other sport, men are portrayed as strong heterosexual individuals. They're But when it comes to like women, when it comes to female in sports, uh, society or broadcasters are very comfortable in portraying homosexual females. So that is one difference. I feel that if you're playing uh, if you're playing as a male athlete, somehow the society is expecting you to be like that strong individual who who has that unwavering focus on his goal, and he'll go and get it. As I rightfully said, people want more of Virat Kohli, and broadcasters are selling it, to be honest. But uh, if you talk about stereotypes, I would say, as we are progressing towards the future, I think that is being changed, because like obviously the two cricketers I'm about to mention are not gay, but like if the two Australian cricketers, Marcus Stoinis and Adam Zampa, they have this like a funny banter going on, a bromance going on between them, and broadcasters have banged on that as well. They those things have made into the headlines, and that but that is in a very playful way. People understand that, okay, they're really good friends, but this angle is being digged because okay, it's fun. you know it's like how we discuss when group of a bunch of friends are sitting together. It's that casual of an approach. But I think as broadcasters, we should you know dive more into diverse storytelling. It shouldn't be one sided. It should be including all athletes from all ethnicity. But as I keep mentioning, people like as broadcasters, because uh, we know what is going to sell. So obviously, the first attention is gone to those athletes or those stories, and then okay, then they are like, okay, what unconventional uh, narrative can be done, and that is like either it will make it or break it kind of a situation where it's a risk, and okay, we'll try doing this. So that is how broadcasters approach it.
Got it. That's an interesting perspective because we see what is broadcasted, but we never see how it is decided what is broadcasted. So I think you've given us a nice insight into the world of what makes broadcasters decide what is to be broadcasted and not. So thanks for that. Um, Geeta, moving on to you. You have represented India at several international tournaments. अब बहुत countries में जाके आपने करा है play किया. I was going through your profile. बहुत brilliant profile है आपका. अलग अलग countries में आप जाके खेले हो. तो उसमें से which city, country, event, कौन सी ऐसी जगह थी जिसमें आपको सबसे ज्यादा inclusive feel हुआ कि ठीक है यहाँ मुझे best treatment दिया गया है? And what were the factors which made you feel the most inclusive?
अ, कैसा है ना, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल तो जब हम टूर्नामेंट के लिए जाते हैं ना मैम, तो कंट्री में कौन सी कंट्री में जा रहे हैं उसके लिए एक्साइटेड नहीं होते, टूर्नामेंट में क्या होगा उसके लिए एक्साइटेड होते हैं। सो कंट्री पे फोकस कम होता है, टूर्नामेंट पे ज्यादा होता है, बिकॉज टूर्नामेंट्स कैसे जीतने हैं, मैचेस को कैसे बेहतर तरीके से हमें वहाँ पे परफॉर्म करना है, वो सब हम इतना क्रेज में रहते हैं ना, तो कंट्री से फर्क नहीं पड़ता है इतना। हाँ, कोशिश करते हैं कि जितनी ज्यादा बड़ी कंट्री में आप जाओगे उतने ज्यादा एक्सपेंसिव होंगे, तो हमें स्पॉन्सरशिप ढूंढना खुद ही पड़ता है, खुद ही इंटरनेशनल टूर्नामेंट्स के लिए खुद ही चीजों को करना पड़ता है इसकी वजह से। तो कंट्री पे इतना फिलहाल तो मैंने अभी तक कभी फोकस नहीं किया। हाँ, मैं टूर्नामेंट पे ज्यादा फोकस करती हूँ उस टाइम पे।
That's interesting to know because I think as players शायद आप घूम भी नहीं पाते हो ज़्यादा कंट्री क्योंकि आप अपने स्पोर्ट्स में आप अपने गेम में ज़्यादा बिजी रहते हो रिहर्सल्स में एंड सो ऑन।
मैम वो टाइम पीरियड ऐसा होता है ना, इतना प्रेशर होता है, और हम पर्टिकुलर अपने आप को या स्टेट को रिप्रेजेंट नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम अपने देश को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं। तो उसके लिए वो चीज के लिए बहुत बड़ा एक डर होता है, और हमारे बोलते हैं ना, हमारा एक छोटी छोटी मिस्टेक भी हमें ध्यान देने की जरूरत है कि वहां पे गलती ना हो। तो उससे तो कोई समझौते की बात ही नहीं आती।
Got it. That's again a very useful response there. With that, I want to move on to Abhir again. Abhir, because you've been a graduate of media studies, how do you think media literacy skills can be developed among individuals? And I want to especially ask you this question because a lot of our audience today is journalism, media, mass communication students. So while all of them are studying this subject, how can media literacy help them? What kind of skills, the students of media and even generally people like me who've not been who do not have a degree but just a diploma, or even those who do not have any formal education in media, what kind of skills would you propose to them and how can they be developed among individuals?
Right. So I think here is where I'm going to take off my idealistic hat a bit, because I think I agree entirely with whatever Niranjan has been saying through so far. Um, I'm in some senses painting a very idealistic picture, but the reality, having been on both sides of the camera, uh, as behind the camera as a student, and in front of the camera as an environmentalist, um, the reality is unfortunately very much to the tune of what Niranjan is saying, right? Which is where it is at the end of the day, It's your click-through rate, it is your TRPs, it is your revenue that you're going to earn, which is driving the considerations that are sort of driving what lends a particular narrative, whether it's a news story, whether it's a documentary, whatever it is. The narrative is driven by the revenue source. um, right? And I too was I just did a minor in media studies, but I did that over 4 years. And I think over 4 years, I don't know if I remember theoretically which readings I did and which courses I did, but the one thing which stood with me throughout those 4 years and even afterwards and opened my mind to so many things was this one reading by Noam Chomsky, and which is I think I'm forgetting the second author's name, Levinsky. I don't know, but Noah Chomsky has written about the propaganda model, right? Um, it was one of the first readings I did in college, and I think that has opened my eyes in ways that I never realized before. And that particular article basically talks about how there are four particular filters. I'm sure, given that the audience are students of media studies, they relate to this. How there are four particular filters through which the media decides or is influenced in making their reportage decisions, right? And I think there is no better time, right, than the present, with the world seeing a surge in populist right wing movements. Well, now 2024, hopefully that's tilting backwards a bit, but in so far the last 4 5 years, the world has seen a rise in populism, a rise in right wing movements. There's no better time, right? I mean, several people may disagree with me, but I would struggle to find any particular media house, major media house today in India, which is politically independent, right? NDTV was perhaps the last stronghold. That was taken over by Mr. Adani. Before that, there was, whether you look at Vion, whether you look at Z News, Z News is owned, the chairman of Z News is a Rajya Sabha BJP MP, right? So I'm not getting into political specifics, but the point I'm making is that today, most independent media, whether it's Star, whether it's Z, whether it's Vion, whether it's even India Today to a great extent, um, are all driving a particular narrative, some more consciously than the others, but they're driving a particular narrative, right? um, in favor of a particular business or in favor of a particular political party or in favor of a particular idea. And that's the entire premise of this propaganda model, that whoever is funding your media houses is the one who's going to a great extent dictate the narrative that you cover, right? Recently I remember one quick example, and I'm a big fan of politics, which is why I can't help but mention it. But um, recently I think there was Star News or one of these channels which was talking about the opening speech our leader of opposition made in the Lok Sabha, and they were fixated on a particular 5 second statement which he made, and they were playing that on loop, right? Why were they doing that? To drive a particular narrative. On the other hand, the minute I went to like, even if I went to Star News's YouTube channel and I saw the whole video, there's no such thing. But because that was a 9 p.m. primetime show on Star News or on ABP, whatever it's called now, they were playing that 5 second loop to drive that particular narrative, right? So anyway, a lot of examples, but the point I was trying to make here is that I think uh, understanding this propaganda model really opened my eyes in a way I didn't understand. And even as someone who is a beneficiary of the media, right? As someone who gives an interview once or twice a month on average to a media house, whether it's social media or the TV, it's also made me aware of what's the spin I need to give to my story, right? What's the masala? What's the angle around climate change? How do I link it to an environment day, or how do I link it to a COP26 coming up, or how do I link air pollution to a political situation that's happening, right? I also have learned how to give that spin and make my story more appealing to the media. um, Answering your question very directly about media literacy, sorry I'm going on, but about media literacy, I think it's simple, right? Whether you've done a degree or not, the first thing to ask yourself when you're consuming media, again, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever the hell it is, the first question you ask yourself is, why are they talking about this story, right? Is it the standard 5 Ws and 1 H model, or is it because it's being driven by a particular funder, right? The next thing to look at is who is funding that particular media organization, right? Um, because media literacy only comes after, media literacy is not just about photojournalism, mobile journalism, or or writing an 800 word article, or writing a pressy or something like that, right? It's first being able to identify and distinguish what is a biased story and what is not a biased story, right? And then the rest follows. So, as a layman, I think it's very important to first research the background, and then you dive into the greater nuances, right? I mean, today there are free courses on Coursera where you can do basic courses on mobile journalism. Today, 40%, or if not more, of the video journalists that I know of who are freelancers, they work with the business standard, business TV in India today, but they also do a lot of freelance video journalism for these smaller international brands which are lesser heard of, but that's all done on their mobile, right? And these are journalists who are 50, 60 years old, some of them who are professors at Ashoka. I don't think they were brought up with smartphones, or even when they were in journalism school, they were not exposed to smartphones of the level that we were, right? So it's just about playing around with it. But obviously, access is a whole other conversation. Affordability, access is a whole other conversation. But yes, those are my few scattered but extensive thoughts on this.
Abhir, I think your response has helped us develop a framework in our head, like the point wise system you told us. It has given us a framework as to how even a lay person can analyze a media story. So thanks for that. Niranjan, moving on to you. When you're behind the camera, which is when you could either be shooting something or be choosing what is to be broadcasted, how do you train your mind to capture multiple identities of people and to show people beyond what is normally seen through the eye?
I would say while choosing a narrative or a story, as I've previously mentioned, I wouldn't try and sell something that is too unconventional, because for a broadcast to happen, you know, as I mentioned it again, it takes a lot of money, and it needs to be made back. So, when a certain athlete is highlighted, we know that that athlete will, bring that money back. It's like how brands also work. If a brand is paying Virat Kohli X amount, and the Harmanpreet Kaur and Spriti Mandana's Y amount, because that is not because Virat Kohli is a man and they are women. It is the understanding, that the brands have, that okay, Virat Kohli will bring in X amount and more. It's the ability to pull in money, because like, as I'm saying, the way I'm answering question is I'm trying to be very real and not politically correct. Could be controversial as well, but let's face it, this is what it is. And as a broadcaster, I'll get a very few opportunities to uh, sell the narrative that I trust, and I think this is the correct platform to do it. So yeah, going back to answering your question, behind the camera, my job is to sell the story of the game and not the individuals. That will happen eventually. That will eventually happen. There will be heroes, there will be villains, there will be stories like, a certain innings that was pretty slow. That innings was one of the factors that costed us the game. Or a certain spell or a certain catch was something that got us the game. That will be made. People will do it on their own. And obviously, with the rise of social media, even before the match has ended, these days I've been seeing that it's so fast that one inning has ended, and sometimes I see highlights on YouTube. I'm like, how can highlights be there? The game is going on right now. So that does not happen from our side, you know. So when I'm capturing, so for example, if you see IPL, you know, if a director is directing, you know, there is a reason why pretty girls are shown on camera in crowd cam. Let's face it, it's a bit sexist, I would say, yes, but we know why it happens, you know. And after that thing is happening, you know, it's been sold on social media so much, you can see it happening a lot more. Previously it wouldn't happen. Previously, if you see in traditional broadcasting terms, you would see, you know, ex-players or a fan who is dressed in a very vague way. But now it has changed because obviously broadcasting started off as, you know, as like an extension of news where you're showing something that has happened, but now it's entertainment. Sports broadcast is definitely entertainment. I don't know about other forms of broadcasting. It's out and out entertainment. You want eyeballs in the world where, you know, people uh, are also skipping 30-second reels. You know, while you're making content, you know how important those initial 5-6 seconds are. How you so people understand it's a fast-paced world. And broadcasting, because cricket itself, if we see, is a very big sport in India. But if you talk to, you know, even the people in UK or the people in America, they're like, we don't have, you know, that much amount of time to sit through an entire game. Even T20 for them is like, oh, this is like 3-4 hours, like no way I'm sitting through it. You know, so our job is to for it to sell us to make it interesting, you know, somehow. And I'll do anything and everything in an effort to make it you know, uh, eye catchy, and, you know, for it to appeal to a larger audience, so that the money that you know, the broadcasters have put in, they make it back. So that is what I feel is my responsibility to, you know, as a broadcaster, if I'm directing a game, is to uh, tell the story of the game, and not be, you know, someone who is including all ethnicities, races, and, you know, he's equal to everyone. No, I'll not do that. And trust me, there will be biases. There will be a certain player will be highlighted more, but that's a part of my job, and I'll have to do it unapologetically.
Got it, Niranjan. With your response, we've developed a sharp understanding of how media enforces certain perceptions, especially when it comes to intersectionality. So, thanks for that. Geeta, I would love to move on to you now with a question that do you think media portrayals empathize with different identities of people, for example, race, gender, sexuality, class, ability? So, does media empathize specifically with any identity, according to you?
मैम ऐसे तो जितने टाइप से होंगे उतने लोगों के लिए बातें होंगी। तो जब तक आप कुछ अचीव नहीं करते हो या जब तक आप कुछ अपने आप को बेस्ट नहीं देते हो, तब तक आपकी वैल्यू ज़ीरो है। फिर आप कोई भी कैटेगरी में हो, कोई भी इसमें हो, कुछ फ़र्क नहीं पड़ेगा। बट जिस दिन आपने एक अचीव कर लिया या अपना जो एक सपना जो हमें लाइफ़ का एक गोल रखना बहुत ज़रूरी है, वो हमने जब तक अचीव नहीं किया तब तक आपकी वैल्यू ज़ीरो है। जिस दिन आपने किया, आपके आस-पास वही लोग दिखेंगे जो बिल्कुल नहीं दिखना चाहते थे कभी। तो मेरी लाइफ़ का भी वही रहा है। स्टार्टिंग में कोई नहीं था, आज इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे इंडिया टीम की कैप्टन हूँ। हर कोई मेरे आस-पास है, इनफैक्ट अब टाइम नहीं मिलता है लोगों के लिए, खुद के लिए भी नहीं मिलता है। तो जब तक आप 0 से 100 पे नहीं आओगे तब तक आपको कोई नहीं इम्पोर्टेंट देगा। तो खुद की वैल्यू बनाना बहुत ज़रूरी है। आप कोई भी कैटेगरी में हो, कोई भी वर्ग में हो, किसमें भी हो, एबिलिटी, डिसेबिलिटी, नॉर्मल, नथिंग। बट जब तक आप अपनी वैल्यूएबल खुद नहीं बनाओगे, खुद नहीं समझोगे, लोग आपको कभी नहीं समझेंगे। और जर्नलिज़्म में आप जैसे बता रहे लोग इम्पैक्ट देते हैं, लोग अच्छा अचीव करने के लिए जो उनको उनको जो एक सपोर्ट मिलता है ना, मीडिया का अच्छा सपोर्ट है, मीडिया को थोड़ा-सा और करने की ज़रूरत है, क्योंकि पर्टिकुलर कोई-कोई स्टोरी एक बार आती है, दोबारा नहीं आती है। तो जब तक आप 2-3 बार नहीं दिखाओगे, लोग इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं देंगे। और हमारी सरकार को या हमारे गवर्नमेंट को, हमारे जो स्पोर्ट्स अथॉरिटीज़ को, जो इनको खुल के आके प्लेयर्स को सपोर्ट करना चाहिए या जो अलग कैटेगरीज़ में उन लोगों को सपोर्ट करना है, वो करने के लिए ये सब इफ़ेक्ट करना बहुत ज़रूरी है। सो मुझे तो ऐसा लगता है कि हमें अपने सपनों को पूरा करना चाहिए, बाकी तो सब अपने आप होना है।
Got it. Thank you, Geeta. I think that's a very good lesson also for us in a way to keep our inspirations up. Abir, I'll move on to you next because you have several contributions to your name, especially in the field of climate. Do you think media narrative on climate tries to blame certain sections more than the other?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Because if you think about it, typically when it comes to climate change, uh, there's always a dichotomy or a sort of dispensation that is developed versus developing, or global south versus global north. Um, so that's definitely there, right? And at a more micro level, another challenge which is there is the fact that uh, narratives are, how should I say, they're limited to a very local context, right? So say if on India Today or an NDTV is talking about, uh, flooding in Assam, or forest fires in Uttarakhand, they'll report on it, but they won't necessarily make a link to a larger climate change story. Some will, sometimes they will, but not always, right? They won't link forest fires or the fact that they've gone up by 400% in the last 4 years to the fact that there's a global temperature increase, there's a regional temperature increase, what the consequences are, right? And again, when those conversations do happen, I mean, the best example and my personally most frustrating yet favorite one is October to February. You see the media talking about air pollution. Come February, they forget about it, right? And when it comes to air pollution, it's typically, you have three politicians or spokespersons from three different political parties at the state government, central government, and the neighboring government, and they're talking about, oh, it's the stubble of this state, it's the stubble of that state, it's vehicle emissions, the XYZ legal authority hasn't done something. So, but again, that's where Niranjan's touch of realism becomes relevant, because the only way people are willing to listen to a conversation around air pollution is if there's masala, if there's a political blame game, right? Otherwise, nobody unfortunately cares enough about air pollution, even if it's killing us, to listen at primetime news at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. Nobody cares about air pollution enough to listen to a primetime debate on it, unless there is some juicy masala coming out of it, right? So that touch of realism is necessary, and thereby stuff like that can of course perpetuate the idea that certain sections are more at blame. Again, continuing with the air pollution example, I mean, uh, the media, whether intentionally or unintentionally, again, as Niranjan said, I don't think it's about intention as much as it is business sense. But very often the media talks about how farmers are, the sort of primary source of air pollution, whereas statistically that's not true, at least in North India, right? It's vehicular emissions which are the number one cause for air pollution um, in the developing world at large. um, so, but the media is often talking about, oh, parali jalana, state governments aren't doing enough to avert farmers from burning crop stubble. So the blame is entirely on the farmers, who often aren't even represented on these panels, or on very rarely are they represented, right? If ever. But on the other hand, they don't want to talk about vehicular emissions or about political loopholes, because they are the ones speaking on these platforms, right? So it's interesting to think about, again, how business interests are driving, or sort of associating blame or guilt of a particular issue, uh, just because that's how, again, the propaganda model is working. So yeah.
Very interesting, Abir. You've brought intersectionality of media and climate to this panel discussion. Moving on to the next section of the questions, Niranjan, I want to ask you, because you've worked in different formats such as podcasting, live reporting, YouTube, and so on. As per your experience, which format have you found most inclusive towards intersectionality?
When it comes to, like being part of consuming content, on different platforms, I would say YouTube is like obviously, podcasting and YouTube go hand in hand in India because podcasting in the UK is a audio phenomenon. They consume it in the audio form. But if you see how Indians consume podcasts, for them that visual element is very important. I've rarely, there are people who consume podcast on Spotify and stuff, but that is a very niche category of people who will do that. Otherwise, so let's just assuming YouTube and podcasting go hand in hand. I would say uh, if you see the way media or entertainment in general is consumed, so it came from obviously movies, then it came to television in the early 2000s, and like after 2010 we have gone to YouTube. And YouTube has given the freedom to everyone to tell whatever their story is. Even if you're like living in a hut in some remote village, and if you have access to the internet and a smartphone, your story will be heard, or you have an opportunity to, you know, share, your part of the world to the world, your part of the world to people, around the globe. So I would say, yeah, YouTube is obviously is like by far the most inclusive, I feel, because it's also very raw, you know. Obviously, YouTube is censored to a point, but it's I would say it's more relevant and relatable in today's world than other forms of media.
Got it. That really. Do you think in that answer you're really trying to pack some advice to the students of mass communication and journalism here, that they should be more proactively looking for opportunities to work in this particular format?
Yeah, that's that advice goes not just to media students, but to everyone. You want to be a part of something that has a future, that is trending, that will help you make money, that has a lot of opportunities. So if you see today, there are more opportunities in social media than print media and other forms of media. So people will dive into it, and that's, I think, as people, that's a very wise decision to do. You know, sell something that everybody is buying. You know, that is also, I would say, a mediocre approach where you're not too unconventional. But as you're speaking about the masses, you should, I think, definitely social media and YouTube, and I think Instagram is also with reels and everything. I think that could be the next step of how content is consumed, where you are like, okay, I don't even have time to watch a 15-minute YouTube video. Just compress that information and give it to me in 30 seconds.
Got
So
it.
that is, yeah, so that is what it is. And I would say, yeah, social media, I mean it is the present and also it's the future.
Got it. So, students, that was a piece of career advice for you from Niranjan. Moving on to Geeta. Geeta, आपकी लाइफ बहुत इंस्पिरेशन से भरी हुई रही है. सो स्टूडेंट्स के लिए कुछ भी लेसन है या कुछ भी एडवाइस है जो आप देना चाहेंगे उन्हें?
मैम, मैं तो यही बोलना चाहूँगी कि अपने सपनों को ज़िंदा रखो, सपने आपको ज़िंदा रखते हैं।
आई थिंक एक ही लाइन
क्योंकि
में बहुत बढ़िया आपने एडवाइस अपनी सम अप कर दी है.
हाँ, क्योंकि एक टाइम पीरियड ऐसा था कि मैं मतलब एक पैरा प्लेयर हूँ। बचपन में कभी लगा नहीं था मैं खेल पाऊँगी या कुछ नहीं, और आज एक इंटरनेशनल प्लेयर हूँ। तो चेंजेस लाइफ में कभी भी आते हैं। बस अपने सपनों को ज़िंदा रखना है। जो मेरा सपना था अपने देश के लिए कुछ करना या ओलंपिक में मेडल लेना, वो एक है, उसको अचीव करने के लिए मैं लगी हूँ। तो बस आज आपके सामने हूँ।
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So let's move on to getting a concluding note from all the panelists, and with that, we will then move on to the Q&A section. Abhir, I would want to come to you first. Could you please share your concluding note with the students?
Right. Sorry. Um, well, I don't have any sort of concluding formal note per se, but I think just to sum up my thoughts after this conversation, um, I think there are two very competing interests which at least emerged for me after this panel discussion. One is uh, that of, you know, inclusivity, diversity, and representing, different perspectives, having that sort of token idea which could be a make it or break it factor. And on the other hand, there is business interest, right? I think we have to sort of strike a middle ground between that, where 60-40, it's in a 60-40 or 70-30 ratio, where 60 to 70 of it is business interest, but that 30-40 of diversity and inclusivity is also, just as important. And I think, there are platforms, we were talking about YouTube and podcasts, there are platforms today which I have never downloaded or opened, but they're so vastly popular. Platforms like Moj, right, which is like a very popular platform for reels, but it's very popular in say tier 2 or tier 3 cities. um and today there are more people who have a smartphone than people who have, there are enough people below poverty line who have a smartphone but not a house, right? So access to the media is there. I think this last statistic I read was 83% of the country has a phone, and a further 75 or 80% of them has access to the internet through that, right? So I think the media is affecting everyone to some or the other extent. The larger question is how to make it inclusive and how to offer these diverse perspectives, right? Obviously, now today, a movie like Pathan with Shah Rukh Khan would have much more sales than a, Badhai Do or a Shrikant, which is offering a social message, right? Again, because that's not necessarily what it sells. But does it make enough business sense to produce that movie where the movie is making say 200-300 cr in the box office, and alongside making say, at least a few tens of lakhs people, if not hundreds of lakhs of people, aware about an issue? Yes, it is, right? So that's a perfect example of where the middle ground can be struck. um, and I think citizen journalism, mobile journalism is becoming such an important part, especially again when it comes to social media. I used to say it as a matter of shame to my media profs back in college that I, only read 30% of my news in print, and rest 70% is on social media. But I've realized that there's nothing wrong with that, right? The larger question as students of media studies is, okay, you're reading a catchy headline on India Today's Instagram, but are you going and actually reading the link in bio article, or are you reading the headline and then spewing knowledge, half-assed knowledge with whatever little you know, right? So that's another point I'd make. And finally, I think just the fact that, um, going back to the citizen journalism thing, I think there's enough initiatives. Like I know there's this company called People Like Us Create Pluck. Similarly, there's a startup which is started by the former CEO of NDTV today, which is called Framer AI, which Framer basically takes 10, 15, 20-minute videos and puts it into bite-sized monetizable reels or whatever outputs you want, right? So you upload it, the software does the work, it gives you captions, it gives you whatever you need for a story, right? So if you do a long form 30-minute piece and you want to make 15 reels out of that, it'll do it for you, right? So it's also mindful to be aware that AI in journalism is not definitely not replacing jobs, but it's supplementing it. So it's important to upskill when it comes to acknowledging that such a phenomenon exists. They just started a year ago, and I think they have about 15, 20 clients outside of India, let alone clients in India. And going back to Plak, right, what they're doing is they're training journalists in villages, where they go to one village a week or one village every 2 weeks, and they show them 10 videos. They ask them, which two videos do you like? They tell them, do you want to make videos like this? And they train them. And then you're actually getting news from a village or a locality or a panchayat which you've never heard of, coming on a website which lakhs of people visit on a weekly basis, right? So it's also about increasing the net. So yeah, I think, long story short, the point I'm making is, A, find that middle ground, B, keep upskilling, and three, sort of be aware of these new opportunities which are coming in the media domain, whether it's a startup, whether it's a big company. I think, as all the cringy business gurus say, reinvention and reimagination is the name of the game. So yeah, that's true even here.
Abhi, that I think was plates full of food for thought for our students. You've given very clear points that they can start thinking about and direct their career in that direction. Niranjan, I want to move on to you to get your concluding note, or as Abhi calls it, your sum up of the panel discussion.
Uh, yeah, I would say like Abir has pretty much, listed down everything that students, require. And I think it was really well framed by Abir. Other than that, I would say, as students or as media professionals, as if you're someone who is obviously, consuming some content and you're like, okay, this is not how it should be done. You're selling something uh, which is very sellable, or like which is very obvious. You need to understand at the end of the day, it's a business and they are doing it to make money. And rather than being offended, I think you should work on how even the marginalized communities can be sold. So work. I wouldn't say someone makes a conscious effort of making news, but we need to understand that if a certain person is like popping on your screens 100 times a day, and the other person is just popping one time, there are reasons behind it, and those reasons are like valid to some point. It might feel that they're unjust, but let's face it, it is what it is, and this is how the world runs and will run eventually. So just focus on what you're doing. Just give everything you've got to do something you like. And obviously, I'm not asking people to not be unconventional. Be unconventional, but also know that it will come at a price.
Got it. That really put it in very concise words. Thank you, Niranjan, for summing it up so well. Geeta, moving on to you, आप कुछ भी summary देना चाहेंगे इस पूरे discussion का?
मैम, इससे ज़्यादा तो कुछ है नहीं मेरे पास। एक स्पोर्ट्स प्लेयर हूँ और ये जो जर्नलिज़्म से मेरा थोड़ा कम लेना-देना है, तो इतना मुझे आइडिया नहीं है, बट मैं अपना बेस्ट करने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ। आप लोग भी बेस्ट।
Thank you so much for that. We will now move on to the questions and answers. Some of you were raising hands, so you can feel free to raise hands now, and I will say your name one by one. You can also specify if you want to ask questions from a particular panelist, or if you're okay with any of them answering that question, that's also fine. Any questions from the audience for any of the panelists? Got it. I would pass on the mic to Julie, ma'am, for the concluding note. Julie, ma'am, are you there? Okay, while we have her, let me quickly take a moment to thank the audience as well as our esteemed panelists for being part of the day. And this panel discussion, at least for me, has helped identify how media representations can both challenge and reinforce the intersecting inequalities. So, thank you, Niranjan, Abhir, Geeta, for being part of this and taking out time on a weekend to do this. Julie, ma'am, are you there? I think Zuili ma'am is facing some internet connectivity glitch. Let me just try reaching out to her. Give me a minute, please. Okay, Julie ma'am, passing on the mic to you. So for just an FYI for all of you, Julie ma'am and others in Mumbai are facing some network connectivity issues because it's raining like anything there. So perhaps that's causing a bit of delay.
Hi, Avni. Yes, my colleague will be joining in a minute. She'll be proposing an official vote of thanks.
Sure. Would any of the panelists want to take this question? What are the challenges of media in modern day? It might not be directly related to the topic of the panel, but I think as a media studies student, uh, the student might have asked this question.
I'm happy to take it, but I'll defer to the the journalist who is Niranjan. But if not, I'm happy to take it.
Yeah, you can go on and like express whatever you feel, and then I would like to like add something if I feel I should.
Sure. Well, I think we pretty much I touched upon some of these, but for me at least, one part of it, there's two parts, right? There's practical on ground challenges. I think part of which Niranjan might relate to entirely. I've had journalists struggling, which as consumers of media we don't think about, but I've known so many video journalists just struggling to figure out how the hell should they get their video cameras on the ground on site to report on a story, right? Because you can't always take it with you in a flight. You have to often rent them locally from whichever city, state, or country you're reporting in. You have to take licenses, approvals, if you're shooting in an enclosed or private space. Similarly, other practical challenges are, of course, related to sort of just commuting and figuring out how to reach some far-flung places, how to mix animation and non-animation together. So those are more practical aspects, and then um, these in turn sort of uh, stem into more macro challenges which pertain to the big one is always funding, right? Who do you get to fund your journalism? Who do you get to pay the salaries? That determines how big your team is. That determines um, the stories they're going to cover. That determines your on ground presence. So the big one is always funding, according to me. But yeah, I mean, those are just a few things off the bat. I'm also rusty on this. It's been 4 years, 3, 4 years.
When it comes to challenges, I would say I'm not a out and out journalist. I'm more inclined towards broadcasting, which is kind of journalism, but not actually journalism. So if talking about some challenges, we'll face as broadcasters is, you know, like inclusivity is a part of it. As even though if you know diversifying the narrative can sometimes be a challenge because then you will be hindering away from the primary uh, uh, you know uh, the primary reason of why you're broadcasting a game is for the game and not to you know, like make a point to include everyone and make it a politically correct modern day broadcast. A broadcast is a broadcast, and you know, in conventional form, as I say, news and broadcasts are the boring elements, if you see. But you know, as we are going towards the future, everything and anything that is done is to, you know, is for entertaining people, and we need to understand if even if a certain guy is interviewed, is because we know he's a good speaker. We know he's going to say something that will give us that, you know, those bites that will, you know, trend on social media. You know, some people are naturally not good at speaking, and sometimes we as broadcasters have to take that hard decision. Okay, uh, his story needs to be told, but we don't think so. Like he's fit for, you know, television. You know, as they say, you know, like in television also, in those reality TV shows, you might be a good dancer, but if you don't have that emotional story, you might not be there, you know, on the show. So it that is some of the challenges. You know, obviously we understand that there should be you know, representation of all parts of society, and we should diversify the storytelling, but you know, as I said, that is not always possible.
That makes a lot of sense. Julie, ma'am, I pass on the mic to you finally. Ma'am, you might have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Am I audible to you all also?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amni ma'am. Uh, as we all know that the Helen Keller say that alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. So this is how our today's international conference concluded with the everyone's support. As we draw to the close of this remarkable RUSA-sponsored international conference, it is my privilege and honor to extend a vote of thanks on behalf of Chikitsak Samuha's Patkar-Varde College. First and foremost, I would like to thank you and almost that is our deepest gratitude to all the distinguished our panelists, speakers, and presenters who have joined us from the various parts of the world. And your insightful contributions and thought-provoking discussions have been the cornerstone of this conference. And discussions on gender intersectionality, particularly in relation to the media, have been the cornerstone of this conference, I will say. Now, at the same time, that is enriching us with the new knowledge and the perspective was the important part of this conference. All our speakers' dedication to exploring how media representations influence and intersect with the gender has provided us with invaluable insights and deeper understandings of the challenges and the opportunities we face in creating a more equitable and inclusive media landscape. With this, we'd like to thank you. That is our speaker, Ms. Geeta Chauhan, ma'am, who highlighted the challenges faced by the athletes and how they need media support for their further journey. With this, our next speaker, that is Mr. Niranjan Shivalkar, sir, would like to give a thank you because of this that every sports person they understood what exactly that we need, and also that you informed us that broadcastings of both female and male athletes and they need to broadcast equally at all levels. Also the Mr. Abir Bhalla sir, who gave the insights like the movies and the serials influence on people and how their perspective shaped our mind when it comes to the gender related content. Now, with this, would like to thank Ms. Avni ma'am, who have asked valuable questions to our panelists, which helped our students to know more about the gender intersectionality. We are immensely grateful to thanks and our Mr. Kishore Ramne sir, Chikitsak Samuha's president, whose generous support has made this event possible. Your commitment and belief in this region of the conferences have been invaluable, and we deeply appreciate your contribution. A heartfelt thanks goes to our Chikitsak Samuha's Secretary, Mr. Gurunath Pandit sir, your tireless efforts and guidance for this conference. Chikitsak Samuha's CEO, Dr. Mala Kharkar ma'am, who have always become the backbone of every event and giving us support. I would like to thank you, our Chief Coordinator of Arts and Humanities and Coordinator of BAMMC Department, Ms. Rima Quatros ma'am, who have always been there to show us correct path and planning of this conference. Now, this conference will not be completed without the support of our BMMC faculties, Ms. Saurabhi Shetty ma'am and Ms. Abhilasha ma'am. From logistics helps to managing the technical aspects, the technical team's hard work behind the scenes has not gone unnoticed. Last but not the least, thanks to every student participation for your active engagement and enthusiasm throughout the session. Your presence and participation have been with the making this conference a vibrant and dynamic forum for exchange. Lastly, once again, a special thanks to our panelists. Your presence has truly made this conference a global gathering of minds, and we hope you have enjoyed your time here as much as we have enjoyed hosting to you. Thank you all once again for making the international conference a resounding success. We look forward to meeting you again at future events and continuing the important dialogues we have started here. Best wishes to all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Avni. Thank you, Julie, ma'am. Thank you, everyone, for inviting. Thank you, Abir, and thank you, Geeta, ma'am, as well. It's a great honor for me to share, the platform of the panelist, to such a big athlete. I wish her all the best you know, for all her, future endeavors, and I hope I get to broadcast wheelchair basketball, someday. Looking forward to it.
Sure, definitely. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.